Hello, and welcome to How to Heal After Narcissistic Abuse. My name is Matthew Coast, and with me today is Marcy Newman. Which, if you don't know myself or Marcy, I've been teaching in the dating industry for since originally started around 2005. Started working with women in 2013. Marcy's been doing this for half a century now. She she she's been helping heal and coach and guide people spiritually and through deep emotional wounds and pain and challenges that they have in their lives for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to have her come on here and talk to us about this because she's really the expert in this topic. So thanks for being here, Marcy.
Oh my God, Matt, I'm so honored to be here, first of all, and to be speaking to our audience who are here because they've been affected by these issues. And there's nothing more important than all of us to come to a place of healing, realignment with the truth of who we are so that we can be free to love again in the way that we're meant to love. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand or know, talking about realigning ourselves with the truth of who we are, is that when you get caught up in these abusive relationships or toxic, even dating scenarios or relationship scenarios, marriages, all these things where it's toxic, you're being abused, there's all these different things are going on. It's actually pulling you away. It's making you do things that you wouldn't normally do. A lot of times people look back at their relationships and they're like, that wasn't me. I'm not normally like that.
Right.
But they got put into a situation where it was like they were cornered, and they had to fight back or they had to protect themselves or they had to do something because they didn't know what else to do. And so it's not that you're a bad person or that, you are, that you welcome these abuse and all these other things to you. It's that this triggered parts of you that you may not even really had been aware of before because you weren't put into situations where you felt like it was a life or death situation or like you had to so fervently protect yourself in the way that you did when you're in a situation like that. And um, so Marcy, can you tell us a little bit about um, if a woman's coming out of a situation and she's been in kind of this narcissistic abusive situation, there's probably been a lot of tension. There's probably been a lot of um, just different things that have gone on where maybe they've received trauma as a result. Maybe they've acted in different ways that they're not used to. What do they need to do in order to heal from this trauma that they have?
So, I mean, it's a huge question, but I actually want to thank you, Matt, because you created an entree for us into this conversation, which is so perfect. There is an aspect of being in this narcissistic relationship where you're actually in perpetual survival mode. Now, hopefully, Matt, you and I will have an opportunity to talk more about and introduce maybe the chakra system, but the root chakra, which is at the base of your foundation for feeling safe and knowing that you're protected. Um, this is where all of that survival is taking place. And what happens when you're in a narcissistic relationship? Because in most cases, you are walking on eggshells. You never know when that safety net is going to be pulled out from underneath you. You're in a constant state of survival. From that place, I want you to just think about it for a moment. What happens when, and you can relate to this, Matt, like a soldier is, in a minefield day after day after day. We're familiar with the term PTSD, and it's very similar to that. You get accustomed to living on the edge, to never ever being able to be fully safe. It's like trying to sleep with one eye open. And imagine yourself day after day, month after month, year after year, being in this constant state. What it does is it actually changes the lens that you look through, so that every aspect of your life, you are looking to see how you need to protect yourself. But also, there comes this time where the distortion occurs, where you also start to take on this belief that there has to be something that you can do to earn that love, to make certain that you're safe, to make certain that you're finally seen and heard, so that you're not bombed. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen in a narcissistic relationship. So when you ask, what is it that we need to do in order to heal? What we're actually asking ourselves is, what do we need in order to feel safe? What do we need in order to come back to that place within ourselves where we know that, number one, we can trust ourselves. Number two, that we can trust that we will create new relationships within ourselves where we can be safe. And so everything always points back to us over and over and over again. And this is part of the journey. It's where we stop looking to the outside for validation, and we get the help that we need to change the lens that we're looking through. And of course, take the actions then that are in alignment with what it is that we are really wanting to experience, which is certainly a safe love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And there's actually a question here from Simone, and it kind of points back to what you're talking about here. And she says, how can one trust again after being gaslighted and manipulated for years? And what you're talking about is this idea of trust. Like, how do I trust again? But it's not only, a lot of times we get kind of caught up in this, like trusting other people, right? How do I trust men? How do I trust relationships? How do I trust this? Which is important. It's very, very important. It's a very valid question. And I think that there's even something deeper there, which is, how do I trust myself again? How do I trust myself when I feel like maybe I let myself down? When I feel like maybe I allowed this into my life, or maybe I chose this, or I put myself into this situation because I believe that this is what I deserved.
Yeah.
How do I deal with that trust? And so what do you have to say about the trust aspect?
Yeah.
Marcy?
It comes from showing up for yourself. So it comes from, number one, recognizing and accepting the fact that you are recovering from a narcissistic relationship. What that means is that for whatever time period that you were in the relationship, that person actually had control over you. And so you gave up your own inner power, your own inner connection, and your own ability to choose what was best for you, because you were constantly, as you were just saying, Matt, looking to others to validate you. Well, there's no part of you that you can trust when you are giving yourself up over to particularly a narcissist, because a narcissist looks at you as a possession. You're not a person in the way that a healthy, sustainable, loving relationship would see you. You are actually a possession. And so there's this part of you that knows that you have to keep giving up these parts in order to stay in the relationship. And ultimately, again, this hope hook that has you believing that You're going to somehow earn the respect of that person. And so when we want to come back to a place where we can trust ourselves, it's a step by step basis. It's where you might say the inner child, right, within has to see evidence that you're going to align your actions with your words. And that is really important. How many times have we heard, words are cheap, right? Anybody can say anything, but it's when the action actually aligns with it where trust is born. The other thing that I want everyone to remember is that these issues, and particularly when we get into relationships with narcissistic partners, it comes from a childhood pattern, a program that we're actually meant to work out of. And what that pattern or that program has taught us is that we're not lovable as we are. And so we have to then earn love. And so, what this actually is a journey of you coming back to self and being able to love yourself in a way that you have never done before. And that is to come back to the knowingness that because you are love, of course you're lovable. You were just with a partner who was not capable of seeing you in that way because that partner was looking through the lens of you being a possession rather than a person.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. And it's very important to understand that
Yes.
that the way that they see you is they don't narcissists don't connect like regular humans do.
That's right.
They see everything as like a chessboard that they're playing this game on, and they're trying to
100%.
feel good about themselves, and they're trying to fill this empty hole that they have inside of themselves. And so um I have a woman here, let's see, Heather, who says, I don't trust anyone. She says narcissists are everywhere. She says if he or she is too good to be true, run. And I think there's something to be said about that, where it's like, okay, yeah, somebody seems like they're just way too good to be true, and so it's that's a problem. But at the same time, right, what we're talking about here is, in my suggestion, what I think that you should do if you're having problems in this kind of a scenario is start making a study out of this. Become obsessed with the idea of trust, right? How do I trust myself? Right? How can I, Marcy was talking about having your words and your actions being in alignment, and then you start trusting yourself. And she was talking about seeing yourself, right? Seeing yourself doing these things where suddenly you go, okay, I'm doing something that is trustworthy for myself, right? And I would kind of extrapolate that into this idea of like, how can you put yourself into situations that maybe aren't so extreme, right? Not, you don't want to throw yourself back into a narcissistic relationship and go, hey, I'm going to learn how to trust myself in this relationship. But instead, how can you put yourself into scenarios where maybe somebody pushes against maybe something that's going on with you that makes you feel unsafe, or makes you feel like you're questioning something about yourself, and then having yourself, take little baby steps, right? How can I speak up for myself? How can I take a stand for the truth that's within me? How can I take a stand for making sure that I'm putting myself in a safe position, and that I'm showing myself that I believe that my words are valuable, that I am valuable, right? Because overall, what we're doing here is what needs to happen is you need to create a safe space for yourself, right? A lot of times what happens when you get into these abusive situations, and Marcy was kind of talking about this idea of me being in the military, right? Because of PTSD and all that kind of stuff. I was in the military. I was in combat, right? And what happened from that was actually very similar, because I came out and I got into toxic relationships when I got out of the military. It was a great time of lots of toxicity, and it's very similar, right? That stuff's very similar. You know, when I came back from Iraq, it was like little things. You know what I mean? Were just constantly loud noises. You know what I mean? If somebody was even a little bit uh, aggressive towards me, I'd like flip out and lose my mind and get even more aggressive towards them, because I was overcompensating because of, you know, the cortisol levels and the stress levels that I had experienced for, you know, months and years on end, to the point where my nervous system didn't know how to deal with just being in a calm, peaceful environment, right?
Right.
And part of that, what happened with that, was that I was actually drawn towards more of those types of environments, because that type of an environment, a stressful environment, became what was most familiar to me. It became, I was around it for so long that it became comfortable for me. And we go back to what is most comfortable for us, right? And so if you're in a toxic, abusive relationship for a long time, that might become what's most comfortable. I talk to women all the time where they've come out of these abusive situations and they go back right into new ones, right? And why do they do that? Because that's most comfortable to them, right? They get that, they've been there, right? And subconsciously they go back into it even though they don't want it, right? And so Marcy, how can we like switch things up so that we start moving more towards something that's healthy, a
Yeah.
relationship that's healthy? Like
It's
what
such a great question, and Matt, I want to thank you for sharing all of that. I'm sure there was a time that you were not even aware of that, and that's what the message is that I have for our audience. You may be in the same space where Matt was. He didn't recognize, coming off of the battlefield, that he was still looking for battle. The energy of that situation, whether it was PTSD or just the familiarity of being in battle, is what drew those other opportunities for him to experience the same thing. And so, who is our lovely guest who is saying that, you know, there are narcissists all around? What that tells me is that you're still in the energy, you're still in recovery. And so that is what you're seeing and experiencing. So that energy that's still so raw and in needing of healing, realignment within you, is calling to those experiences. It's not to punish you. It's not because that's all that you deserve. It's just the universe responding to the energy. It doesn't see things in terms of good or bad or right or wrong. It's it just says that that energy is still so strong within you. It's still affecting the lens that you're looking through, and you're still in survival mode, just as Matt was when he came out of the service. And so what Matt and I are doing, our intention with this and with future sort of mini classes that we're giving, is that we want to help you to develop an awareness, a conscious awareness. Matt talked about things happening on a subconscious level. We want to help you to develop a conscious level so that you're aware when those energies of survival, no matter how it's disguised, is something that you're aware of, and you're aware of its pull, and you decide, no, I am not going to live in survival mode anymore. I want to thrive. I want to experience the freedom that love, true love, promises me. And so, in that moment, that split moment, to use a military term, we're talking an about face, right? Where we are pivoting and shifting into remembering what it is that we want to experience instead. Well, guess what? The more that you do that, the universe will respond to that rather than all of this energy that you're putting into maintaining the survival mode, even though it's not really where you want to be. It's familiar, and the energy is still so magnetic that it's pulling more of those experiences towards you. So, what Matt and I are talking about is making what I call a heart shift. It's a recalibration of the energy so that rather than the thoughts that are connected to survival are now being fed through your heart's desires. And your heart always knows exactly what and where and how all of this is going to come together for you. So we learn to trust the heart rather than the head, because the head, and we've talked about this before, Matt, 97% controlled by the ego that only wants you to stay in survival mode where it has control over you. The ultimate narcissist is the ego. So when you meet a person who is a narcissist, 100% of the time, you need to say, oh, they're ego driven. Well, for you, who has decided now to be heart driven, heart centered, okay, that's no longer a match. And so as you continue to feed your heart, to follow its urgings rather than the endless chatter of your mind, you will find the universe just lays itself at your feet with all of the experiences that a healed heart is meant to experience. And that's pure love.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful. It's beautiful, Marcy. So Kelly Green asks, how do you feel about the saying forgive and forget? So Marcy was just doing a forgiveness challenge here recently. What do you think about the whole forgive and forget idea?
Yeah. Oh my God. Thank you so much for the question, because it's such an important one. The issue that so many people have with forgiveness is that somewhere along the way, they have aligned with the belief that forgiveness means that you have to forget about what happened, how a person hurt you or betrayed you or anything that occurred in that disappointment or broken-hearted situation. Of course, you don't need to forget. You know, if you forget, you are really just trying to deceive yourself. Forgiveness is actually when we come to the place where the incident is no longer controlling us. So think about the energy that has gone left to be unforgiven as the ego, as the narcissist. I mean, this is such a perfect tie-in, right? It sees you as its possession. When you reach this place of forgiveness, you are letting go of that control over you, and you're taking control back over your own heart. And so you don't need to forget. But what happens in the healing is that it becomes neutral. It no longer triggers you into that PTSD or back into that survival mode. Instead, you've become so safe and secure, so trusting of your own heart, that you know that you will not put yourself in a position where someone else has control over you again. Not ever. And that's true forgiveness, because what we're doing essentially is we're forgiving ourselves for letting go of the control, the power that is ours when we're connected to our own heart. We're forgiving ourselves for allowing someone else to possess us and for having control and power over us. And so it becomes more of an exercise of reclaiming yourself, reclaiming those lost parts, those parts of you that you've given over to someone else, looking for that validation, looking for that evidence that you're lovable or you're this or that, whatever it was that you needed. And so this topic of forgiveness is a very deep topic, and it's one where we can spend a lot of time with. But essentially, what I want you to know is that it's a coming home. You're coming home to your own heart and coming home to your truth. And of course, coming home to your own power, your power to create the life that you came here to live and the love that you came here to give and receive. So that's the true essence of forgiveness. So you don't have to forget anything. You just have to choose you over everything else.
Beautiful. Yeah, choosing yourself. I agree with Marcy. The whole idea of forgetting. Like, I don't know why that phrase became popular. It probably became popular because people got so caught up and stuck on things, and so they're like, forgive and forget, right? Yeah. And then it just became like a common phrase that people are using, in society. But
it also, excuse me one second, it also became an impossibility, right? There are things that you're not meant to forget. You want to, they remind you from time to time so that you don't end up in the same situation, but it's no longer controlling you. That's the difference. So yeah, it's moving on. And what's amazing is that when you really solidify this new relationship with yourself, sounds strange, but you'll end up forgetting about those other things anyway, because you no longer even need them to remind you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big believer in the idea that, all of the things that are happening to us, and I know that this can sound kind of strange or maybe even like you don't want to hear it, but a lot of the things that happen in our lives are actually there as gifts. They're there to help us. They're there to help us grow. They're there to help us evolve spiritually. They're there to help us help other people, right? So, and to, make sure that you're able to help yourself and, pass that gift off to other generations or your children or other people in your life. Sometimes it's not your children, sometimes it's friends or family or, just people in your community. But these experiences that we have, they make us wise, right? They give us a chance to grow, and you have a choice that you get in your life that you can either step into, I'm going to walk into this healing space. I'm going to forgive and let go and grow into something stronger and better and more powerful, so that I can better navigate my life. I can better navigate situations in the future. If I see somebody else that might be confused or naive or unaware of what's going on, I can help them out and lift them up. And so I think it's better to look at these things as, how can this help me grow? What can I learn from this experience that's going to allow me to live a better life? And how can I take that information and help other people that might be in, difficult situations themselves, so that they don't feel like they're alone, so that they don't feel like they don't have the information or the will or the support or the backing to make sure that they put themselves into good situations or get themselves out of bad situations, right? And if you're constantly caught up and stuck on this thing that happened, it's going to prevent you from moving into who you want to become. It's going to prevent you from growing into the man or woman that you are, that you want to become one day, that can deal with these situations, that when, a situation where a narcissist comes up and they use that phrase, or they use that manipulation that normally would get you triggered and caught into it and you're all sucked into it. Instead, what it does is you go, no thanks. I'm not going to deal with that. I've got better things. I've got more important things to live into in my life. I don't have the time to get caught up in this drama, in this nonsense, in this game of manipulation that doesn't help me in my life. So, in my personal opinion, that's the best way to kind of look at it.
Perfect.
Let's see. Liz says, I sometimes wonder if I'll ever get out of survival mode. I'm 56 years old and I've been in survival mode for about half of my life, raised 3 kids by myself, unhelpful fathers, and then my family threw me away and my parents died, so to speak. Do you have any words of wisdom for Liz here?
Yeah. I know that it may feel daunting. I know that it may feel like this is an impossibility. I've lived like this for as long as I can remember. And what I want you to know is that that is the magic of you. The magic of you is that you can choose to see things differently, to do things differently, to be things differently in a nanosecond. That's what is the difference between us and other creations, right? We have this ability to choose at any moment to change our lives. And we have seen evidence of this over and over and over again. And unfortunately, it's the other experiences in your life that have overshadowed those moments where you just made an abrupt change. And so, what I want you to know is that everything that you need in order to do that is already within you. But it will take your choice because we live in a free will universe. Energetically, nothing happens until we choose it to. And so, what I recommend is that you get, everything that you need in order to support you in changing the lens that you are looking through. Number one is your belief system. The belief that everything, right, that you're experiencing means that you're going to just experience that for the rest of your life. And there's nothing that is further from the truth. The second thing I want you to know is that if you look at the word belief itself, in every single rendition of belief, in it, there's another word, and it's lie, L-I-E. It means that in every belief, there's a lie about you. Because beliefs, unless they are based on universal law, it's a temporary crutch for you. It's a temporary way that you're looking at the world that gives you kind of an excuse to stay where you are. And I know that that might sound a little rough, but it's not your fault. You've been programmed to do this. Matt was talking about familiarity. We've been talking about the ego's impact on the thought system. And so many of the beliefs that we carry forward in our everyday life are filled with lies. They're totally negating who you really are and that you have the capacity to change your life. And it sounds trivial, but in the same way you change your socks, it really can be as easy as just making that decision. And the more energy that you put into it, what is the universe going to do? It's going to respond to you and it's going to say, how about this? How about that? Give this a go. In other words, it will bring to you the teachers, like Matt and I are here in front of you. It's going to bring the programs. It's going to bring the opportunities. But here's the other thing. It's going to bring new people into your life. So a lot of times, because of the strength of these beliefs that are filled with lies, we have surrounded ourselves with other people who reinforce that lie. And I'm sure that we'll be talking about this in the future, but your spiritual journey will also create these gaps in relationships. It's where what the relationship was based on in the past no longer exists for you. It just no longer exists. And so you may not be able to relate in the same way that you did before. But this is where, again and again, you're going to hear Matt and I say how important it is that you're creating this solid relationship with yourself, because it's time to create new beliefs. And from those beliefs, I promise you, if you continue on this path, that it will shift from a belief into knowingness, the knowingness of you, the knowingness of the connection that you have to that source of love within you. And this is the promise, actually, of you. That's why you're here. That's what this journey is all about. It's for you to discover that path. How is it going to unfold for you? So you have a lot to look forward to. And some of it is going to be sheer delight. Other parts of it will really require that you let go of beliefs filled with lies about yourself. And it might be uncomfortable. But again, the promise is that you will be free in a way you've never experienced before in your life, because the lies that you've been carrying about yourself will no longer be controlling you. That's real freedom.
And if you're going to tell yourself a lie, you might as well come up with some good lies that you're going to tell yourself, right? So Morgan says, thank you for helping us and others speak out by shining your light, speaking up. Blessings to you always. Well, thank you, Morgan. I appreciate your support.
Thank you so much. It's so sweet.
And then Coco says, can a narcissist change if they are aware of being a narcissist?
That's my God, best question.
It's a really interesting question. You know, and it's what's interesting about it. And I'm going to give you two takes here. The first take is that I believe deep in my heart, I believe that there's a lot of things out there where people are like, oh, you know, like personality types, for instance, are this thing where they're like, oh, okay, personality types are something that don't change in anybody, right? And it's something that you're born with and that you have until you die. Well, they've done a bunch of research on that, and they found that even those can change, right? And so one thing I'd like to say is that we all change, right? Some of us just change back into the same thing that we were before, right? But we change over time. And the reason that we change back into the things that we were before is because we're comfortable there, right? Just as you might be comfortable in certain situations, a narcissist is comfortable in certain situations because they've lived that for so long. And so can they change? Probably. Will they change? Unlikely. And either way, the other take that I'm going to give you here is that most people ask this or talk about this, and I've seen a lot of people ask and talk about this, and it's because they want that person to change for them, right? And they want to do something to change that. They're like, maybe I can change them. You know, can I change them? Is there a way? You know, and my suggestion is that you don't get into the business of trying to change people. I suggest that you get into the business of accepting people for who they are and the way they are right now. And then saying, okay, if this person stays this way, what does that mean about my relationship to them? And whether I want to have a relationship to them, or what it might look like moving forward. If I have to have a relationship, we had somebody else in the comments mention something about going through a divorce with their kids and all this stuff. And it's like, sometimes you're not going to be able to just cut and run. Sometimes you have to deal with this person. And so you want to look at it and say, okay, if I do have to deal with this person, what is a way to deal with them where I can stand in my truth, where I can stand in a place where I'm safe, where I'm powerful, where I'm making sure that I'm not getting caught up and sucked into some kind of needless drama that's going to take me down a road and a path that isn't helpful to anybody, let alone me. Right. And so that would be my answer to that. Did you want to say anything to that, Marcy?
Yeah. So I have two thoughts. Number one, exactly as you said, Matt, it comes, even the question itself comes from this really deep desire for that person to change. And I'm going to tell you something. So I was married to a narcissist, and I remember before my divorce going through this period where, exactly as Matt was saying, I did everything and anything I could possibly imagine to be able to stay in the marriage. I didn't want to give it up. Of course, it requires a lot of change in a lot of people's lives when that happens. But there was also this moment where I had this realization that the only change that would have any permanency was change that I made within myself. And when I went into that process, then what became so clear to me was that the reason that I wanted that other person to change was really so that I didn't have to. If that person would change, right, then I wouldn't have to go through what I needed to go through to become who I am today. And so there's always a far greater picture of what's going on than what you see. However, I also want to clarify this. So there's a difference between narcissistic tendencies and a narcissistic personality. At one time, the narcissistic personality was actually in the medical books as a sociopathic personality. Let that sink in. So it depends on the degree that a person is in their narcissism. I'm working with a client now who, in her marriage of over 50 years, is suddenly awakening to her husband being a true narcissist and how she has been controlled, how she has diminished herself in order to stay in the relationship. This, of course, requires a real reckoning. It requires what I call spiritual accountability, where we're accountable to ourselves, and also then spiritual responsibility to make the changes that are necessary so that we can love ourselves the way we're meant to and create a life that's in alignment with that. And so, what often happens, particularly if you've been with somebody who has only narcissistic tendencies, you get hooked. I call this the hope hook, right? Where you get hooked by this hope that that person is going to change. That person can only change in the same way that I changed or the same way that you will change. And that is by putting in the work that it takes to reprogram, to recalibrate so that you're seeing things differently, so that you are understanding yourself differently and creating a different existence, a different experience. Change cannot be demanded of another. Change cannot be, outlined by another, how you want them to change. All of that needs to be redirected towards you. And here's what I have found, and I've worked now with thousands of people all around the world. And when that happens, when the um, the pointing of fingers, outwards starts to come inwards, and we start to see how we have perhaps abandoned ourselves or even betrayed ourselves under certain circumstances. And by the way, you have, if you've been in a narcissistic relationship, then the healing must take place in us. And what happens is the focus on that other person changing is no longer your focus. The focus then becomes, what do you want to create? And I will tell you, in most cases, that person is no longer a fit for that life, because you're seeing yourself differently and what you're worthy of and your value. And of course, in that place of loving yourself, you start to recognize that you deserve it all.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's a lot.
It is a lot. And it can feel like it's far away, like it's something that's difficult to even get to, or like, I have a comment right here from Kimberly who says, I've been abused all my life. How do you get out and not return to the same thing? How do you get out when you have nowhere to go and get healing?
Yeah. So first off, you do have somewhere to go. You're right here. You're right here, and it's your intention to start to heal your heart. And I want you to know that Matt and I are dedicated to supporting you in that process. The other thing is that I have this personal mantra I want to share with you. Every time I come up against a belief like that one, with that big fat lie in the middle of it, because the lie is that you have been abused your whole life and will continue to be abused. That is the lie. So whenever I come up against that sort of belief, and I see that lie, and I now see the word lie, if I'm looking at my belief, I see that word lie like jump out at me. I know immediately I have to change something. So I want to share that with you. But secondly, my personal mantra is, the moment I see it flash in front of me, it's like I move into this. That was then, and this is now. That was then, and this is now. That was then, and this is now. And I have this whole dance. I have a song. I do whatever I need to do to shift that energy right there and then. And I know that I've shifted it when I start to laugh. I feel softer. And I'm willing to accept that there's a big fat old lie in that belief. And so then the next question is always, well, what if? What if that is a lie? What would it look like then? And these are some of the paths that Matt and I are going to take you down. Because the what if, well, what if that is a lie? What if, there is something more for me? Then we're here to help you create that. We're here to help support you in raising your energy so that you're now feeding the energy that has the potential to create something new and different. And that something new and different is going to be one where you start to feel loved, and you start to feel supported, and you start to feel that life is no longer going to pass you by. You're going to be a part of it. And being a part of it means that you get to co-create and make sure that your heart is in the forefront of that planning committee. And then how to be true to it. We have an awful lot that we want to share with you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. And yeah, I just want to kind of give you the same perspective as Marcy, but I want to give you another question to use because I found that questions can be really, really powerful, right? And so what you're saying here is a very interesting thing, right? You're saying, I've been abused all my life. How do I get out and not return to the same thing? That's a great question, right? What kind of puts you back into the weeds is the second part of this, where you go, how do you get out when I have nowhere to go and get healing, right? And what that does is it kind of closes things off for you, right? It takes all the possibility that's in the air or that's out there, and it sucks it out, right? And it says there's no possibility here. What can I do when there's no possibility to do anything, right? And the answer is you can't do anything because there is no possibility there. And so what you need to do and what you need to start with, and what Marcy was talking about, is saying, okay, well, what if there is a possibility here, right? And the question that I like to use, Marcy was saying, what if this is a lie? The one I like to use is this true, right? Is it really true that, I have nowhere to go to get healing, right? Is that really true? And if that's not true, right, or maybe there's a possibility of something else that might be there. As Marcy just gave you, she gave you the example of you're here with us right now, right? It's not like you're like hanging out in a closet somewhere, staring at the wall, being like, I have nowhere to get. You're literally connected with two healing people that are here to help you grow and heal and go somewhere and get healing, right? So the question that where we're like, hey, is maybe this is a lie, maybe there's something else there. All we need to do with where you're at is open up a possibility that maybe something else is true. And if that is true, then a whole new world opens up for you, a whole new journey, a whole new phase of your life where you can step into this place where you went from, there's nothing I can do, I'm stuck here, I can't go anywhere, I can't get healing, to suddenly there's something else that's possible for me. And if you want to do it with us, I think that's great. We're here for you. We are here dedicating our lives to help you heal, to help you get unstuck, to help you start moving forward so that you can have a beautiful, amazing life filled with possibility and a bright future that you wake up excited for, and great loving relationships that fill you full of joy and happiness and new possibilities. And so that's kind of where we're kind of hitting the 60-minute mark here. So we're gonna oh, there's one more question here. Do you want do you want to answer this question, Marcy? I feel like since I accidentally clicked on it, we should. What's that?
Tell me the question.
Yeah, she says, why do people feel attracted to narcissistic ones? I can control my feelings to avoid being in love with someone like those. Like maybe she's saying she can't control her feelings to avoid being in love.
So once again, I want you to there are certain things that we have to accept. Okay, number one, we're energy beings, so we respond to energy. Your attraction to a narcissist actually comes from childhood programming. And what happened is there was a wound that was created. Now, what does a wound need? If you cut your arm, for instance, the wound needs to heal, right? If you tend to it properly, what happens is that the process is called granulation. The wound heals from the inside and heals to the outside. Okay? So the tissue starts to repair and regenerate on the inside, and then that hole fills in all on its own. We're such marvelous beings. However, when that wound is not given what it needs to heal properly, let's say, for instance, it's not given proper food, proper cleanliness, it's not being cleaned out on a regular basis, it is gets infected, meaning another wound happens on top of it and on top of it and on top of it. The wound remains gaping, remains open. So many times, because we've experienced these childhood traumas, right, that have injured a part of us, it has not healed properly. And so rather than it healing from the inside, we look to the outside to get what we need to heal. And that is why you keep attracting a narcissistic personality. That energy, okay, is actually what, in most cases, created the wound in the first place. And so that energy is reaching out for other energy just like itself. So it thinks, you think that you're going to heal your wound that way, when in fact it may reinfect or re-injure the wound. However, ultimately, if you create this new awareness, you can use what you've learned to rise above it, and that will heal you from the inside out. So what a narcissistic relationship often does is it's actually putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound, but it's not getting what it needs underneath to heal. So it has you constantly changing the Band-Aid, believing that that's what's going to heal it, and it doesn't. Healing can only happen from the inside out. And so when we're talking about healing the wounds of our childhood, and this is no fault, I'm not putting any blame on anybody, but when we're talking about healing the wounds of our childhood, we're actually talking about healing our hearts, healing our sense of self, healing our worth, healing our value, knowing what it is that we deserve, and in fact, that we are love itself.
Deep. Going deep there.
It is deep. I can't help myself. Sometimes those wounds are deep and you have to go there. Yeah.
Well, and you know, heart work is about going there. You know, heart work is about connecting there. So many of us have been so disconnected from our hearts for so long that we don't even know what that is anymore. We're so disconnected. We don't even feel it anymore. So many of us have become numb, right? It's really easy, especially if you've gone through abuse, if you've gone through situations that are really difficult, if you have trauma, it's really easy to become numb, because that numbness, it at least isn't painful in the moment. It doesn't feel as painful as dealing with the trauma, as, you know, dealing with, you know, what's hurt your heart, dealing with the betrayal, dealing with, you know, feeling like you've been hurt and you've been trapped and you've been unable to go anywhere or do anything, right? And so what we're here doing, what Marcy is an expert at, and what we are dedicated to helping you do, is reopen your heart so that you can connect with who you really are and connect with the love that's within you, which is abundant and plentiful. And when you do that, your entire life will change.
Everything.
Yep. And so, so we're going to leave it here on that note today. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today.
Thank you.
It's been great. We're going to do a series of these, and talking about different topics and challenges that that you're having, and how to heal and grow from those. If you're interested in going even deeper, we have programs that you can pick up. I'll put links below this video for you, and you can go check those out. So thank you all for being with us here today, and we will see you again soon. Any last words, Marcy?
Just from my heart to yours, know that you're more than capable of shifting, heart shifting into the love that you already are. Yeah, just have to let it unfold. Your heart's waiting for you.
That's right. That's right. All right. Well, have a great day, great night, great evening, wherever you are in the world.
That's right.
And we will speak with you again soon.
Thank you.